Diana Ippolito, who is a filmmaker, a writer, director, and producer. We're going to get to know a little bit about her and the projects she's working on. So let's start off by asking, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so do you do a lot of interviews?
No, this is like one of the things I like to be behind the scenes, so coming in front of the camera is sort of weird.
Okay, we're very excited to talk to you. We're going to start by asking you sort of how you got started in the film industry, because you're a writer, right?
Correct.
So
Primarily a writer.
Did it start there, or did it start with something else?
It started with photography, actually. I was a photographer for many years, starting in high school. And years later, I always liked to write short stories, but never thought of it as anything but something I did at home. And then I took a class at the American Film Institute, just by a lark, a writing class, and then suddenly I loved it. I was like, screenwriting is for me.
Yeah.
And that's what sort of segued my whole transition from fashion photography into being a filmmaker.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what kind of photos were you taking?
So fashion. I moved to Los Angeles and I did a lot of fashion work, celebrity work, and then after a while it sort of became, it was my passion for a while, and then all of a sudden I was like, okay, I think I could do something else now.
Yeah.
I did it for 10 years, and then I took the class, which is why I took the class. And then I was like, this is what everything was kind of culminating towards, and I didn't know that was going to happen. My life changed, and I changed careers.
Oh, do you find there's a crossover with maybe like directing models and directing actors?
Absolutely, because I had to be a storyteller in pictures. So my fashion work was always about telling an odd story or juxtaposition of a girl in a gown on a railway station, or like what was she doing there? What was the story behind it? So it was always drama, and I think that sort of segued into my writing, and like I could just do it in longer form, in writing.
So you found yourself combining the writing and the photography.
Yes.
Did you have, were you well versed in film, or did you learn as you went?
I loved movies, but I wasn't well versed. But as soon as I took my first class, I became like obsessed. I was like, okay, I understand now what I have to do. I have to watch films, I have to break them down. I have to understand why they did well. I have to understand what made them funny. Why did this movie do well, and why did this movie tank? And I began to do it by myself. For months and months and months, just watching movies, writing them down,
Yeah.
And then I taught myself.
Yeah. What's been one of the hardest things about being like an independent filmmaker, producer, especially in those early years?
I think figuring it all out on my own, just like not going to film school, just understanding that this is how you cast. This is what happens when someone that you cast drops out at the last minute. This is what happens when you are pledged money and the person doesn't give you the money. You know what I mean? It's like problem solving, and I think that was the most challenging part. Like figuring out how to stay calm, how to still have people look to you and like you're in control even though you don't feel like you're in control, and just kind of navigating that whole indie film path.
Yeah. So the kind of stuff you've been written is so interesting to me. So we have a couple biopics you told me about.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit how those came to be?
Yes. Well, the other thing that I love besides filmmaking and photography is music. And so I was naturally drawn to want to write biopics about musicians. And so I started writing, sort of for myself, because I thought, well, no one's going to think this is interesting, except me maybe, because it's a kind of obscure person. And then I started researching, and I thought, this person has a lot of conflict in their life, and that's how I began the journey of writing the biopic about him, Andy Gibb. He was a big superstar in the 70s. And had he was a brother of the Bee Gees, and he had a imposter syndrome, really. And I thought that's interesting because a lot of people can relate to that. And that's how it started. It became a story about how do you navigate fame when your brothers are so famous and you go into the music industry as well, and then you feel like you're just the guy who got a break because your brothers were famous, and the imposter syndrome that goes with it, and the demise of like, well, I feel bad about myself, so I'm going to try taking drugs, and then the kind of the fall of what happens to you when you go down that rabbit hole. So I think that makes for a good story.
Yeah, it's really cool. So especially when those are biopics, like the actors are very important. How do you go about casting?
Well, I think it's the most important thing is to find someone who has the talent, and you can change so much now with wigs and makeup, so it doesn't necessarily always have to be about do they look just like them, especially with a biopic when you're portraying somebody else. It's somebody who can give the essence of the person. I think that's key.
there's a lot of tones when it comes to biopics, like, you know, sticking to like exactly how it was, or taking like freedom with it. Like, where do you stand on that?
Yeah,
Spectrum.
there's a fine line, because there's been a lot of controversy about, like, well, that never really happened, or they conflated that, or they added that storyline, or you know, and you have to, because when you're storytelling in a movie, there's a, you know, everyone expects it internally, when conflict should happen in a story. You just sort of know it in your DNA. You know, like, you watch so many movies, you understand like those beats, and so sometimes you have to manufacture those. And so while I always try and do the most that I can to stick to it, you often have to manufacture things just to have that.
Plot, yeah,
exactly. So I'm like, whatever serves the story, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I don't mind it in other pictures. Like, it was a good story, I went along for the ride.
So these stories are very like intense and you know, rooted in drama and things like that. So I know you also like to do comedy, and you like to keep it, you know, varied. What else have you done that's different from that?
I just finished writing something called Rodeo Sisters, which was a deep dive into the rodeo world, but I wanted to write it from a different perspective, so I wrote it from perspective of women of color. So it's about these 4 friends who go into the rodeo circuit and navigate what that's like when you're not Caucasian. You know, 2 of them are Latinas, and there's 2 other ethnicities in the movie, and it's sort of navigating what that's like in a world that's not usually, you know, it's not usually for Caucasians. You know, it's mostly that, and so it was like this other world of like, how do I fit in? And it was sort of like rising up to the challenge, and that's what the movie's about.
So is there like a reason you wait on projects, like when they come to you? Like, for example, if you're writing something, have you put it on the back burner for a long time, or do you like to work on like one project at a time, and once it's finished, it's finished?
I tend to do both. I'll have good ideas that I write down, and then I don't have enough time in the day. So sometimes, like a movie that I'm in the middle of working on right now, something I actually interviewed people about 7 years ago, and I just finally had the time to get back to that story. So it's sometimes they're right away I write them, and sometimes I'll just let them germinate, and then I come back around to them.
Yeah. Is it a documentary, or is it like a?
It's actually it's about 2 the first brothers who became had trans surgery in the 1970s. So the first brothers who became women, so sisters, brothers to sisters.
Oh, that's so cool. It's like, I see like a pattern in the kind of stuff you like to write about. So do you like to keep it, you know, tell stories about like that are very diverse and like
I like
that are really
to, yes,
important to you?
absolutely diversity, stories that people don't necessarily know about, or stories that should be told that no one, you know, I try to find the ones that no one's done, so that it makes my work stand out. But also, I love underdogs. I love people who don't believe in you, and then you show them that you actually could rise to the occasion, and I love that. I guess that's who I am, and so I really like to write about that too.
Were you good at history in school?
I did. I loved history and geography.
Yeah, I can see a lot of because a lot of the stuff you're doing is based on
all historical.
events.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So I know you're currently working on a proof of concept. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, I'm actually filming next week. It's called Mafia Daddies. It was inspired by Robert De Niro and Al Pacino having babies in their 80s, and I thought, that's hysterical. Like, what are you doing with, you know, babies in your 80s? You know, you should be like your grandkids.
Great grandkids.
Right?
Yeah.
Grandkids, exactly. So then I thought, well, what would happen if you were those types, old mafioso guys that had to go back in and do one last job, but then you had your babies to take care of. Like, it's a comedy about like, what do you do with your kid when you have to go back in and do one last mafia job?
Yeah. Do you have like a dream person to collaborate with?
You know, anybody that would love to, you know, because it's a proof of concept, right? It's going to show you what it could be. But anybody who wants to come in and collaborate and give me the future money that I need.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so on set, you know, it's very important with the people that you're spending a lot of time with. So you mentioned your cinematographer has worked with you multiple times.
That's right.
Do you tend to do that a lot? Work with the same actors, same crew?
I like to because it's almost a familiarity with you have with someone. So someone knows your style, they know your personality, you know you can count on them. So my DP's been with me, Colton Curry, for about 8 years now. And every time I call him up, he's down to do whatever. So that's he loves it as much as I do. So it's not necessarily always about the paycheck. It's always like, well, let's scrape a little bit of money together and make something, you know, because we love our art. And actors too. Like if I can call up anybody and say, I got something, it's for 2 days, or I got something for 5 days, can you come? They're always like, when and where? And so I'm like, okay, come on down. So it's always nice to have that kind of ease of working with people, and you know that you can count on them, so then working on set becomes so much easier.
Along your journey, has there been anything that you picked up along the way that once you did it in one film, you want to keep it going?
In terms of directing, you mean?
Yeah, like maybe in terms of like the way you cast, or maybe like a particular style, even like the type of cameras you're using.
I actually like to change it up actually every time, depending on the story.
Mm-hmm.
So I've used different kinds of lenses to create a different look when I was doing a horror movie, which is completely different than doing a drama. Mm-hmm. So depending on the genre that I'm actually filming, probably no, I would change it up, not keep anything the same, but keep it fresh. You know, keep editing fresh. You know, like it depends. Like I'm doing the editing when I finish my comedy. So we're going to come up with a whole different editing style for that. That would never be something that you do in a drama. You know, just kind of fun, like exaggerated, like swings with the camera and like the push-ins, you know, and all that stuff, which is exaggerated for comedy. So yeah, dependent on the genre.
Yeah. How involved are you? Because editing is like a whole. It's like a third of filmmaking, right?
Yeah.
Where are you in the editing process? Like, are you always like, show me scene by scene, scene by scene? Do you leave it to your editor? And
I think I will give general notes at the beginning and say these are the takes that I like, but then I'll show them styles that I like, and then I'll have them put it together, and then I kind of come in and fine tune. So I'm always really really involved because you're right. The other part of filmmaking is the editing.
Yeah, that you could change
You
the whole
100%
thing.
can make someone who's terrible be really really great.
Yeah.
Cut them quicker.
Yeah, but like thank goodness to the editors. Okay, no, that's amazing.
It's true.
Having a good team.
Yeah.
Okay, has there been any sort of story or like any moment that surprised you in filmmaking? Like maybe it rained and it wasn't supposed to rain, but you used it. Something like that. It felt sort of magical in the process.
Well, you know, I actually made a feature film during the pandemic. And we shot with no permits, with nobody over our shoulder. We just run and gunned it, you know, we were just guerrilla styling because we all were cooped up and we wanted to do something and everything was closed. And so that was fun. We basically drove and we're like, over there, let's park it.
Yeah.
And that ended up being amazing. Like when people watch the film, they're like, did you spend a lot of money on this? Because it looks like you did. And I was like, no, we didn't.
Yeah, it's crazy how some of them are so visceral and it's
Absolutely.
just like one take.
Yeah, yeah. And then, well, you know, that goes back to good casting, you know, because sometimes you can say, hurry up, park the car, we're losing light, and if your actor can nail it, you can get that shot, you know, and that's great. Yeah. So it goes down to casting, you know, you just know you can put your faith into them and they have done the work, and that makes your work so much easier.
Yeah. Despite that, how like by the book are you when it comes to doing lots of takes or doing one take or maybe sticking to the script or changing it up on set?
You know, for certain scenes, I will be like, yeah, that's the line, so stick to it because it's a pivotal moment. But other times I like to be loose because I think people can bring their own experience to something and sometimes they can be smarter and they'll be something that's a little bit less writery, you know, less dialogue-y, and they'll bring something that's actually just flows better. Yeah. And so I don't mind. It makes me look better. Like I wrote it.
Yeah, because you're a writer, you're thinking about it as a writer's perspective,
absolutely. Right? But you have to also be loose because I've watched other people's where they'll do the thing on like Instagram where you'll see like the script and you'll see the scene and you're reading the script and you're seeing the scene. I'm like, yeah, those lines aren't quite right.
They're not matching. Yeah,
they're not matching.
Cool. That's
but it happens all the time. And I'm like, oh, it's not just me.
Yeah.
Everyone else is doing that too, and it works. So you have to just be loosey-goosey.
Yeah, it breathes a whole another life into it.
It does.
Okay, you've done a lot of different genres and different types of projects. Is there something that's still that you want to venture into? Like you mentioned, you did a horror, you did comedy. Have you done period? Like.
Yeah, I actually. It's funny. At the beginning of my career, all I wanted to do was period piece, and then everyone was telling me, "You'll never sell them because they're too expensive." So now I just. Well, I see them all the time. I'm like, well, how is that possible? Because everyone else is doing it. Now I just write them anyway. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't mind anymore. I don't really worry about that. I'm like, it can be a writing piece. I can bring it out when I read the right person. So, period pieces are fine. Yeah. So eventually, one day, getting one of those made would be wonderful. Yeah.
Do you have like a dream era to put it in?
I do. I wrote one that takes place in the '60s called "Racing Under the Moon," and it's based on a true story. And it's about some kids who go from California to Vegas to try to get married by midnight so that they don't have to go off to Vietnam. So they're marrying their boyfriends. Yeah. and it's about what happens along the way and sort of growing up and what does it mean to get married, and are they eventually going to have to get drafted and go off to war. So it's a nice coming of age, but also with the heaviness of the draft and the war, it's got that kind of gravity, but at the same time it's lighthearted because it's kind of a road movie. So I feel like it's got all the right elements, and to get that made would be like my dream come true.
That's amazing. And I feel like with how much you like get into history and you know telling these stories, you have to have period in there in your career at one point. So that's really cool. Okay, do you have any advice for anyone that wants to be an independent filmmaker? Maybe they're starting off, like maybe they want to write their own stuff.
My advice would be to kind of do what I did. I just kind of jumped in. Like I was just writing, and then someone said, you should direct some of these, and I was like, I'm behind the scenes. I'm the writer. No, thank you. And then I was like, well, wait a minute, because I was trying to find directors, and I'm like, well, I know best what I want for my film. So my advice would be to just do it. Now with digital, you can, with your phone, even if you want to, before you like get a whole crew, you can practice and do little short films with your phone, and you can colorize it now, even using iMovie if you wanted to go that basic. But I think it's all about what it's the experience of doing it. It's getting people to say your lines, to be excited and be like, oh my god, that's my words, they're saying my words, and like getting over that, and then going, okay, now let me focus on how does this edit together, and can I make this film worthy, and then just do it. Just do it, because now you can. It doesn't have to be like the old days when it was film and it was expensive and you have to get it processed, and you can make a movie in 15 minutes.
I have a lot of filmmakers say that they their movies are like their children. They can't choose a favorite. But do you have any one that feels like it's your baby that you're really proud of?
Ones that, yes. Another one that I made during the pandemic. I did a comedy. And we run and gunned it, and we didn't have permits, and we shot it, and I made a series of 4 films from it, and they're my favorite. They're funny. I still think they're funny 4 years later, and I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay, so what do you have going on right now that you want our viewers to know about? Like, what's next for you?
I'm actually just in the final stages of completing a movie called The Two of Us. It's about the first brothers who had a sex change operation in the 1970s and became women, so they went from brothers to sisters. And it's the story of what navigating that life was like in the 1970s. And it's from the perspective of the mom, so it's a little bit different. So I'm finishing that, and I'm actually going to Spain for a writer's retreat in September. And I'm going to be presenting my work to a network of people there. So I'm getting all my scripts ready for that, and then just this Mafia Daddy's proof of concept.
Yeah, so it's all varied and really fun.
It is fun, it is fun. So it's nice to be able to change pace, heavy dramatic or period piece to comedy. I like to switch it back and forth, just, keep my mind fresh.
Yeah, keep it happy and stuff. Okay, and then like lastly, I want to ask you, what kind of things do you see? Because a lot of the time, I've heard that for actors, it takes like 30 years to be an actor. People say that life experience is like almost more important than like getting down, jotting your ideas, because you need to like go see things. Is there a time in your life or something that really inspired you? Something random. It could have been like something you saw on the street that you're like, oh, I need to write a script about that.
I think all of my experiences of growing up have infused themselves in my work, from having an Italian father and a Mexican mother, growing up in that world, different languages and different humors and different music that was played in my household. All of that, and it's just in the period that I grew up in also infuses my work. The camaraderie between my sisters, the fights and all that stuff, the pinching and all the stuff that went on as we were growing up, and my neighbors, and all of that sort of reflects in my work. So I would say all of my youth, and even stuff in my 20s, infuses itself into my work. So not in one thing specifically, but just those experiences of that time, a different generation.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay, well, thank you so much for being here.
You're
I had
welcome.
a really good time. Can you please plug your IMDb or your socials? So
yes, you can follow me on It's All Happening Films on Instagram, and I'm on Vimeo too for my films. You can catch my work there. So it's just my name, Diana Ippolito, at Vimeo, and I'm on Twitter or X as Diana's Eye.
Perfect. And then what's your production company name?
It's All Happening Films.
It's All Happening. Okay. So thank you so much to the viewers for watching, and we hope you stick around for more. All right. Bye.